Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Sensible Truth on the Medlock Post. This is episode 9. And this is, again, we're celebrating America. Today, we're going to talk about the Constitution, about the founders. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about the Declaration of Independence. And there might be two shows. I might do one tomorrow and do one actually July 4th to cover some things because I don't want to do a whole hour long thing. So, all right, so here we are, Sensible Truth on the Medlock Post. I'm your host, Richard G. Medlock. Our purpose is to lift, inspire, encourage, and empower. So today, I want to start with a couple of things and just mention Trump and the United States are continuing to win. It doesn't matter what the press tells you. They hate the man. They hate him winning. They hate America. They hate the Constitution. But he is winning. Things are getting better. So don't listen to the mainstream media. There are plenty of voices like mine that are telling you the truth. But let's start today. Here's our Celebrate America. Let's start with the preamble to the Constitution. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. It is not the Constitution of the United States, Constitution for. There's a difference. Now, I ought to take a whole show and break all these down because we can point to areas where our government, those running the government have taken an oath to uphold this, and they haven't. And that's why we're in the mess we're in. But not today. We're going to do that another time because we're celebrating. We're celebrating America. This is what it's all about. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to take some readings from the 5,000 Year Leap by Cleon Skousen. If you want to understand the Constitution, not the legal aspects of it, but to understand the mindset of the founders, read this book, 5,000 Year Leap. It's on Amazon, and I'm sure it's other places. I've gone through several copies. I wear them out. I used to hold seminars on these in the 70s and 80s. But I'm going to take some readings there and some other books and some other authors to put things into perspective for you. Now, this is Cleon Skousen writing in his dedication to this book, dedicated to the Constitution. To that generation of resolute Americans whom we call the Founding Fathers, they created the first free people to survive as a nation in modern times. They wrote a new kind of constitution, which is now the oldest in existence. They built a new kind of commonwealth designed as a model for the whole human race. They believed it was thoroughly possible to create a new kind of civilization, giving freedom, equality, and justice to all. Their first design for a free people nation was to encompass all North America, accommodating, as John Adams said, 200 to 300 million free men. They created a new cultural climate that gave wings to the human spirit. Wings, freedom, agency. They encouraged exploration to reveal the scientific secrets of the universe. They built a free enterprise culture to encourage industry and prosperity. They gave humanity the needed ingredients for a gigantic 5,000-year leap. Now, why a 5,000-year leap? Well, look at history. Go from Adam and Eve down. What really kind of progress happened? Not a lot, very little. But here comes the United States of America, inspired by our Creator to come about. Now, there were 28 great ideas that helped change the world. This is again from his book. There was hardly a single idea which the American founding fathers put into their formula that someone hadn't thought of before. However, the singularity of it was the fact that in 1787, when the Constitution was being written, none of those ideas was being substantially practiced anywhere in the world. It was in America that the founding fathers assembled the 28 great ideas that produced the dynamic success formula, which proved such a sensational blessing to modern man. Now that many of those precious principles are fading into oblivion and scores of unnecessary problems have risen to plague humanity, it should be in America that the banner of human hope is raised again. We should remind ourselves that it took the founders 180 years to put it all together, 1607 to 1787, and they made numerous mistakes along the way. Nevertheless, when they finally put the new charter into operation, George Washington was able to write after only 2 years, quote, "The United States enjoys a scene of prosperity and tranquility under the new government that could hardly have been hoped for," unquote. The next day he wrote to David Humphreys, quote, "Tranquility reigns among the people with a disposition towards the general government which is likely to preserve it. Our public credit stands on that high ground which 3 years ago it would have been considered as a species of madness to have foretold," unquote. Not only did it change the United States, but within a few years it aroused the admiration of the whole world. Experience proved these principles were sound. They are sound today in our modern space age of third encounters and Superman. The founders' thinking may sound terribly old-fashioned and even pre-Victorian, but their principles have the advantage of an impressive track record of empirical proof that they are practical and true, eternally true. That is their primary credential. Our purpose is to present the founders' 28 great ideas, and that's what he goes through and does in that book, The 5,000-Year Leap. Now, one of the experiments was Adam Smith's The Wealth of Nations, a free economic culture supported by the government to make sure there was an environment of free trade, free to produce, free to sell, free to fail. To take the human spirit that was unleashed and use your talents and abilities to produce things, to provide things that others need. And we saw that. And in 50 years, from 1787, 50 years or so later, America was the richest country in the world. Now, James Madison, referred to as a father of the Constitution, wrote a fitting tribute about his renowned colleagues, quote, Whatever may be the judgment pronounced on the competency of the architects of the Constitution, or whatever may be the destiny of the edifice prepared by them, I feel that their intentions were good and honest. Now, let's turn to Ezra Taft Benson, who was the Secretary of Agriculture under Eisenhower for 8 years. He wrote a book, A Heavenly Banner, referring to the Constitution. And he says, he talks about the role of government. And he says, the basic principle concerns the function and proper role of government. I should like to outline in clear, concise, and straightforward terms the guidelines that determine now and in the future my attitudes and actions toward all domestic proposals and projects of government. And I'm not going to cover all of them, but just some key ones, a couple of key ones. These are the principles, and this is Ezra Taft Benson, in my opinion, proclaim the proper role of government in the domestic affairs of the nation. I believe that governments were instituted of God for the benefit of man, and that he holds men accountable for their acts in relation to them. I believe that no government can exist in peace except such laws are framed and held inviolate as will secure to each individual the free exercise of conscience, the right and control of property, and the protection of life. He continues, I believe that all men are bound to sustain and uphold the respective governments in which they reside, while protected in their inherent and inalienable rights by the laws of such governments. In other words, the most important single function of government is to secure the rights and freedoms of individual citizens. Now, this is his third important principle. It pertains to the source of basic human rights. Thomas Paine, back in the days of the American Revolution, explained, quote, rights are not gifts from one man to another, nor from one class of men to another. It is impossible to discover any origin of rights otherwise that in the origin of man. It consequently follows that rights appear to man in right of his existence and must therefore be equal to every man, unquote. The great Thomas Jefferson asked, quote, can the liberties of a nation be thought secure when we have removed their only firm basis, a conviction in the minds of the people that these liberties are of the gift of God, that they are not to be violated but with his wrath? The feelings of these great men are in keeping with the revelations of God through his prophet, who said, quote, men are free according to the flesh, and they are free to choose liberty and eternal life, or to choose captivity and death, unquote. Now, Senator Orrin Hatch from Utah, who deceased a while back, was in the Senate for a long time. He had this to say when he wrote the preface for the book 5,000 Year Leap. Let me read a little bit of what he wrote. We may have needed the obstacles and experiences of the past 2 centuries to furnish us with a frame of reference which would help us understand what the founders were trying to tell us. As it has been with the children of all ages, it is difficult to recognize the distilled wisdom of our forebears unless we ourselves have had at least some degree of maturity and experience in the University of Hard Knocks. The most impressive element in this outstanding omnibus of political thought is the fact that these precepts are precisely what America needs today. It is alarming to think of the billions of dollars which we are expending each year trying to solve problems by methods which the founders knew were fallacious. They attempted to warn us, to share their wisdom with us. Too, too often their counsel has been ignored, and I'll add, still ignored. Continuing with Senator Hatch. Now we must return to them. I am especially delighted that this volume emphasizes that the Constitution is not out of date. It is no more out of date than the desire for peace, freedom, and prosperity is out of date. The founders were not custom building the Constitution for any particular age or economy. They were structuring a framework of government to fit the requirements of human nature. These do not change. And that is the genius of this is me. That is the genius of the Constitution because the founding fathers understood human nature through their studies of history and philosophy and science and other things and the Bible. They understood human nature and knew that that would be the biggest battle. Back to Senator Hatch. These do not change. What protected the freedom of George Washington will protect freedom for you and me. I am also pleased that this book is easy to read. It is presented at, okay, I'm going to skip that. Few Americans realize, I'm sure, what a cornucopia of prosperity and progress was open to humanity by the Declaration of Independence and the structure of liberty under law provided by the Constitution. The whole idea was new for this age. Their adventure and freedom was even frightening to the founders. But the fruits have been incredible. The founders opened the floodgates of human ingenuity so that in merely 2 centuries, mankind advanced from transportation by lumbering ox carts to being propelled by rockets to the moon. And this is just the beginning. It is not the end. We are the ones that should lift the lamp beside the golden door. We have been blessed in so many ways. We have been blessed. I want to share some other quotes to you as we end this up. I pray God's blessings upon every loyal, patriotic man and woman that is endeavoring to do right. When we safeguard the heavenly virtue of freedom, when we honor it, when we protect it, we will walk with Washington. We will pray with the patriots, and we shall have peace on earth, goodwill to men. Paul H. Dunn was a veteran of World War II, an educator. We are immigrants, you and I, because the Lord made immigrants of us and brought us here. We have done as well as could be expected. We are richly blessed despite our shortcomings because the Lord has thus far held us in his hands and worked his purposes, his ultimate purposes through us. And I mentioned this the other day with the Supreme Court rulings and other things. God's hand is still with us. Freedom thus obtained, that is, by obedience to the law of Christ, is freedom of the soul, the highest form of liberty. It is within the reach of every one of us, regardless of what people about us or even nations do. All we have to do is learn the law of Christ and obey it. Natural law, God's law, Creator's law. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is our message this day. And I hope that you've got a little bit better understanding of what America really is. Why I love her. Why I respect and revere the founding fathers and those that have upheld the Constitution, Lincoln and others. And that's what we're trying to do today. We the people, like on my shirt, we the people are the work. We need to work with the Lord to save this land. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is my message today on Sensible Truth on the Medlock Post. And we'll be back tomorrow and the next day. And if you don't get to us by then, have a happy 4th and a safe weekend. May God bless you, and may God bless America.